To end this first part of our program, here is a work by one of the most brilliant of French contemporary composers, Marcel Landowski. It's called La Marche des Farfadets. Marcel Landowski, who is Director of Music at the French Ministry of Cultural Affairs, nonetheless continues a brilliant career which has led him to write some famous lyrical works, including Le Fou, or The Madman, and Le Rire de Nils Hilarius, The Laughter of Nils Hilarius. This musician has a bold musical language, although not an abstract one. His music remains very human, and it's often inspired by popular tradition. He's true to this approach, even when composing works where instrumental technique and virtuosity of expression are his main objectives. In La Marche des Farfadets, he shows us a clear, joyous, often surprising and picturesque work. It's played by the ORTF Light Music Orchestra, directed by Paul Bonneau. The second part of this program begins with a work by Joey Hajos, A Man Walking in the Night. He's a distinguished musician and a prolific melodist. Joey Hajos has a feeling for vast, expressive, and ambitious orchestral movements. Here, he uses the strings to suggest the disquieting mystery of night, during which we can hear the attractive but obsessive central melody. The work's played by the ORTF Light Orchestra, directed by Raymond Chevreux. over now to Tony Morena and his ensemble, which is dominated by the accordion. Tony Morena has chosen to play a work for us which is a classic of its kind, The Queen of the Musette Ball by Jean Perronin. It's a typical piece of music which you can often hear at a Saturday night's dance in Paris. The last work on today's programme is called Don Quixote Against the Windmills, and it's by Yves Prin. This is a somewhat ambitious work with a great wealth of sound images. The music evokes Don Quixote's sad battle against the windmills to win a race against the wind. It's played by the ORTF Light Music Orchestra, directed by Paul Bonner. You have been listening to a program of light music from France, presented by the ORTF, the French Broadcasting System, with the Cormier String Trio, the ORTF Light Music Orchestra, and Tony Murena and his ensemble.